My name's Sophie Healy-Thow. I'm 23. I recently graduated from my bachelor's in international development and food policy here in Ireland. This year, I co-founded a really cool campaign aimed at transforming food systems called Act for Food, Act for Change. It's a youth-led and youth-initiated campaign, and it's supported by the United Nations Food Systems Summit, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and the Food Foundation. And I wear a lot of different hats, but they all kind of are foodie hats.
I mean, everyone knows, about climate change and all that, but this is more of a less known, less talked about topic. So how did you first get involved in this industry in particular?
Yeah, great question, because what are food systems? Like, who knows? I got involved through science originally. When I was about 13 or 14, I really, really hated secondary school. And I initially started doing like DIY science and entering my science projects into our national science competitions. And I ended up always doing my science projects something related to food and agriculture. And I ended up being quite good at it, honestly. I won our national contest for young scientists, which was called the BT Young Scientist and Technology Competition. That brought me to the EU contest for young scientists. And I was really lucky to win that with a team. And then we went to the Google Science Fair in Silicon Valley in California. And again, we were very lucky to win that with a project based on increasing crop yields for people in climate affected regions. And it was during one of the days where we were showcasing our project to Google, where they had high school students come in that were our ages, and they got to ask everybody that was involved about their science projects. And I remember explaining like food security to like some people my own age. I think I was about maybe 15, 16 at the time.
Whoa.
And I was with like blank faces. And they're like, what do you mean people like can't go to their fridge and get food? And I was like, hang on a minute. This is ridiculous. How come people don't know about it? How come we're not taught about food systems in school and food insecurity in school? Because it's not just an issue for people living in the African or Asian region. It's people are food secure in Ireland and the UK as well. You just don't hear about it as much. So I ended up going down basically like a whirlwind path of going to conferences and speaking at events and panel discussions. And I was at the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals at the United Nations, and I hated it. I hated these conferences and panels and events because I was the only young person there. And I was just like a box ticked off for these people in these rooms, giving me a role or like it
was almost a novelty.
Yeah, exactly. And it was horrible. I ended up stepping back completely from those kind of things and going into more youth-based organizations and youth events and things that were led and initiated by young people, because they were the people getting stuff done.
Do you think there's any reason for that? Or do you just think that we've seen the detrimental side of things and we've had enough of it?
In some factors, it just comes down to we're fed up. I think people our age see change as a responsibility, not a choice. It's literally not a choice anymore to eat less meat or to not use a plastic bag. It's you can't do anything else.
So you are a lead group member of Scaling Up Nutrition, the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. So could you talk a little bit about that and what that's all about?
Yeah, so the Scaling Up Nutrition movement is a United Nations movement. The UN has lots of different organizations, but this is its probably one and only movement. So it's meant to end, which is really nice. It's there to end. And it's all about ensuring that nutrition is in governmental agendas, whether it be in terms of health or climate, but it's there and it has a place and it's there to be acted upon. But specifically in like global north countries where malnutrition, stunting and undernutrition are extremely high.
You spoke briefly about the Act for Food, Act for Change campaign. Could you just kind of elaborate on that and how that came to be and what is being done with it?
I think Act for Food, Act for Change began in the most Gen Z way possible. It was through social media. I saw a tweet and it was like, over 1 million Bangladeshi students have pledged to eat well and live well. So they pledged to give a percentage of their pocket money to making better food choices, healthier food choices. And it became so popular in Bangladesh that these young people were actually able to change the food stalls that were outside their schools from fast food stalls to like healthy, nutritious fruit and veg stands that they can spend their pocket money on. So huge kind of thing. And I tweeted that I would like to pledge with these young Bangladeshi students to give like a percentage of my income to healthy food choices. And my friend Maureen Maketha from Kenya messaged me and she was like, let's do this. Let's make it a global campaign. So we got together, just like you and I are now, on Zoom, and we wrote up a proposal together and we sent it to the organization who led or helped support the Bangladeshi pledge called GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. And we weren't really expecting a reply. We thought, when you look at these kind of organizations, they're kind of, I guess, like ivory towers, like untouchable. Like, why would they listen to us? But they did. And they accepted our proposal to make this a global campaign. And then Food Foundation was brought in, which is an organization based in the UK, working on food poverty within the UK. We launched on May 18th. What we did was we brought in one of the young Bangladeshi leaders who was leading the campaign in Bangladesh onto our team. And then both Maureen and I reached out into our different networks to kind of gather like young people who we knew were going to be passionate about changing the food system. We came up with our campaign name, Act for Food, Act for Change, and we wrote a pledge. And this pledge was written by, I think at that stage, 20 young people. And it had to be a pledge that made sense to each and every one of us, no matter our religion or culture or the political sphere that we lived in. And it had to be easily translatable as well, because now it had to speak to everybody. Mm-hmm. So we came up with a pledge and we put the pledge out there, and then we came back to each other. We were like, what does a pledge really mean? Like, where does action come from a pledge? We don't want to be another pledge sitting online, no action coming from it. So we decided that we needed actions for change. And these actions for change had to be tangible. They had to be doable, and they had to be like filled with passion and motivation for system change within the next decade. So again, we went out into our networks and we asked each young person that we knew, if you had a governmental leader or a business leader sitting in front of you, what would you ask them to change? And nearly as importantly, could you commit to change do as well? So we gathered all our responses and we brought them down into 17 actions for change, which are now on our website, and they are currently being voted upon. And we brought our draft top 5 youth global priorities to the United Nations Food Systems Summit, pre-summit in Rome. But we're also going to bring the top 5 priorities in September to the United Nations Food Systems Summit in New York. But we're also going to bring them to COP26 and the Nutrition for Growth Summit in December. So all these big milestones for food system transformation, we're going to ensure that young people's voices are in each and every single one of them. I mean, currently we have over 10,000 pledges on our pledge, and we have a little less votes. So for anybody listening, please vote on our actions for change, because we want everybody's voice to be heard when it comes to youth priorities.
I will link all of the stuff for the website and everything down below. Could you, off the top of your head, give examples of a few of the actions that are...
What's coming up as the number one priority for young people is across the globe. Because what I forgot to mention was that we can break these priorities down into regions and countries as well. So I can see what young people in the UK are really passionate about and see as their priorities. And I can see what young people in China are really passionate about as well. But we have a global image as well. So the number one priority that's like being voted upon across the globe, no matter what region or country, is ensuring access to safe and nutritious food for all. So young people are really passionate about ensuring that everybody has access to safe and nutritious food, no matter who you are. Another one that's coming up quite close to the top is ensuring school meals exist for everyone. What's really interesting is that we're seeing less of a push for plant-based food and meals, which I think was really fascinating. Because coming from like Ireland or Europe, I was expecting a really big push from young people for more plant-based food options.
What's more interesting to me is the fact that meat obviously is not a sustainable option. And so, like, if we want to make food available for all, surely it would make more sense to eliminate the meat option altogether, particularly in school systems.
Yeah, definitely. It's also very culturally, that's a hard word to say, specific. I mean, for example, if you're a young person in sub-Saharan Africa and your only livelihood or only access to, I guess, nutrition is like the goat or the cow your family has, cutting out meat isn't an option. I know I was at an event in Switzerland a few years ago, and they did the really great thing of cutting meat out of their event food supply. And I was like, this is amazing, like vegetarian, vegan options galore. This is great. This is a whole step forward for conferences. But there were these two young girls from, I think it was Malawi, who it was like their first time in Europe, and they were at this conference and they just couldn't eat anything. Like their bodies weren't used to the food that was available, and they just didn't eat for like the 2 days of the conference. And their minder had to be like, why aren't you guys eating? Like, are you okay? And they were like, we don't know any of this food. When we eat it, we like feel sick. It's like also being mindful. I mean, in America, Canada, Europe, it makes sense to go vegetarian or vegan. We can do it. But in other parts of the world, it's a little bit more difficult, I guess. So it's all like relative.
And I think that's actually a very important thing to promote, because in my mindset, very westernized mindset, I'm quite blind to the privilege of being able to be sustainable almost.
Yeah. And you know what? We're very lucky. We're very lucky that we have the education, but also in like this day and age, it's expensive. It really is expensive to be vegan and to be vegetarian, in the sense that not just funds, but like in knowledge and time as an expense as well. And sometimes the easiest thing to do is pick up that like fast food meal on the way to work or your lecture. I know that students, for example, it's just faster, it's easier, and it's less expensive to pick up the easiest, most accessible option to you on the way to your lectures or on the way home. As students, we're fed the narrative that we're supposed to be hungry and we're supposed to be poor and we're supposed to only be able to afford like the pot noodles or like the frozen pizzas of the world. And that's a false narrative that we've been fed to accept. We shouldn't have to put up with only being able to afford the food that's not good for us. You know, and it's something that I think as students like need to work on and like stand up for ourselves in that regard, for sure.
I have never even contemplated that before, but yeah, now that you said it, I'm like, hold on. And I think, it's getting the word out. It's getting more students aware of the fact that that's actually not acceptable.
Especially when, as students and as young people, we have so much to put up with. There's less jobs in the market. There's college fees getting more expensive, cost of living, rent is higher, mental health is a crisis, climate change is we're living in it. All these things are also interlinked, you know? they're not separate issues. They're one issue, and it's human rights. And our human rights are being violated in nearly every aspect of our lives. And food plays a vital role in ensuring that you can partake in your lectures to the best of your ability. And also, it plays a vital role in how you see yourself and your body, and how healthy like your mind is, to be able to deal with all these crises that are going on around us. And usually food is seen as a very separate issue, if an issue at all.
So, I mean, this is of course a feature for International Youth Day, the theme for which this year is transforming food systems. So very apt. But I mean, it's obvious that this is not a one-day topic to talk about. This is kind of a movement that needs to keep on going until something is resolved. So, of all the things that the youth can do, youth watching this or whatever, what can we do? The average person, how can they make a change? What can they do in their everyday lives?
In your everyday life, you can definitely cut down your red meat consumption. And if that's not possible for you, you can eat locally. You can buy the meat or your food in general from local sources. But also, if that's just not possible for you either, just having a conversation about where your food comes from, like with your loved ones or with your friends, it's just opening the door to talking about food in a way that's different, or looking at food in a different light. I mean, people can also pledge on the Act for Food website and vote for your actions for change on the Actions for Change website. That is also very important, being part of a community. But at the end of the day, talking sometimes is the first step to creating change. You know what? There's so many things that you can do. I'm like struggling to think of just one. And now I'm just thinking, when it comes to food waste, don't put your food in the bin, right? Put it in the fridge for the next day, or just make enough for you for today.
I mean, yeah, I think it's not a bad thing to overload with the abundance of things that people can do, because I think that a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'm not part of the government, I can't do anything.
You know what? I used to think that as well, for sure. I mean, I used to think, governmental leaders and politicians, they're not going to listen to me. Like, who am I to have any say in what they're doing? All I can do is vote. But then I started writing letters to my governmental officials, and I started just calling up their offices. And I think they really disliked me by the end of it, because I was annoying. But they answered eventually. And they listened, and we were able to have a conversation. And now when I see them like at events, I can go up to them and be like, hey, did you do what you said you were going to do? You should do what you said you were going to promise to do. There's like 10,000 young people who have pledged on the Act for Food website, and they want you to change. Are you going to do it? So even something like that, if you're really, really passionate about, say if there's like no local food options in your area, even like small things like that, and just starting that conversation with people in positions of power in your area is really important as well, I think.
I'll link many links below, but if you want to just put out where can we find more about you, more about the things you're working with, where should we go for that?
Okay, so people can go to the actionsforfood.org website to find the Act for Food, Act for Change pledge and voting system. But also, if you want to become more involved with the United Nations Food System Summit that's coming up in September, please do go on to the United Nations Food System Summit website. On there, they have a community platform. And on there, the youth constituency has fought really hard to have a youth section. And we also have an Act for Food, Act for Change section on that community platform. So if you want to meet a more global audience and community of young people who are doing some incredible things across the globe, from Zimbabwe to Canada to Fiji to London, you can find people there who are really incredible and you can connect with and link up with and do some really cool hopefully global projects. They're the two things that I would suggest reaching out into for sure.
This was so interesting. Thank you so much for talking with me.
No, thank you for having me on.